Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the matmaker. This is an add-on I wrote for neotex, and it allows us to make materials from tile textures. So we don't generate the tile textures here in Blender, but we can generate a ton of materials from this, and we can do so in a automated manner. So let me show you the folder structure for the project. So let me open my file manager here, and we can see that we have our textures folder, although I can delete it since we don't need it in this project. And we had a mat folder. This mat folder is obligatory because the tile textures will be searched for in this folder. And inside I have a few tile textures I made. So if I show you the thumbnail view, you can see it's just a bunch of textures. So something like this. And these are 4K. See, yep, it's 4K. So let me just close the image viewer, and let me launch Blender with the file here. So I just type Blender and matmaker.blend, and let me show you here the shaded view, and you can see that I already have a material. And if we pay attention down here, you can see that I've put my debugger here, so it will run until here, and it uses this word matmake-concrete. That's a preset I made for generating the concrete materials for our texture library. So this processed around 40 materials, could be a little bit less. So it's very useful. I also made a preset for asphalt, for metals, the copper one and the aluminum, also the galvanized. I also made a preset for paper, and well, I made quite a ton of presets. So let me show you the file here. So let me just open my file manager and navigate to my distribution here. So this will be this add-ons folder will be the one you will have in your add-ons. I just made a link so I could edit it more easily. And the file in question is this one here, mat-table.neotex. So if I open it, and let me just make this window a little bit bigger and move this up, you can see that I've made, well, it's a ton of functions, a ton of words, but the important part lies here. I've made a few presets, matmake-asphalt and the mat new, and I'm editing the diffuse channel and such. Same with brick, same with concrete, same with gravel, mud, paint. There's quite a few. So if you want, you can just use these presets, but I'm going to show you how to make them manually. So let me just come here and delete this line here. And we have quite a few words. Let me just comment these words here, which we are going to be using, but they are not obligatory. So to start the matmaker, we just call the matmaker word at the beginning of our file, and then we call the mat-scene word, which is this one here, with the resolution of the final image. So in this case, I'm using 4K texture, so I will be making 4K in my scene. And the next one is just the name of the tile texture. So let me just get out of here and reopen my file explorer, and you can see that I am calling concrete 09. So I am calling this image here. Now for all my images, I tried to tile them the best I could, and I tried to remove color when it was possible. So you might find them, the images in the library, you might find that they are quite desaturated or rather neutral. So I'm using concrete 09, but I could also use concrete 08, or which concrete do I have here? 06. Let's see the 06 one. And if I run up till here, you can see it does nothing, just cleans the scene and puts these items on the stack. So the actual word that does all the work is this one, the mat-new. So if I run it until here, and it won't let me load anything. If I run this here, you can see file exists path to material library texture. So it's because I don't have a texture assigned because I deleted my textures folder. So let me just pause a little bit and paste the link again. And now it works. I just had to paste my textures folder here in my file explorer. Let me show you. I didn't have to delete it. So if you are having trouble with the neotex not running, just try pasting a texture folder if you don't have one. So now I run it and you can see that I have a material which it's kind of glossy, it's just kind of there. So we can just use our editing words. So I have my D for my diffuse. So if I put my output in here, you can see this is my diffuse channel. And I am using a few words. You can check the manual for the exact description, but it's very simple. This EQ-PBR, and it tries to equalize my color. So for example, if I have a range too big in the saturation, it will try to put it in the middle of the range. So here it doesn't do too much because, well, the diffuse channel was already kind of gray. But this is not just for the diffuse, you can also use it in your specular and in your metal. So let me just show you how does my diffuse look in the end. And it looks like this. Just a little bit of a change from this one here. Let me see. Yeah, it's just a little, quite a little bit changed. Now I can do the same thing with my specular. So let me show you how my specular channel looks. And it looks the same because, well, I am using the same texture. So if I were to show you here my shade 3, you can see it's just the same texture. It's concrete06.png. So it's using the same textures for pretty much everything, although this one is just set to non-color. But let me show you what this EQ-low word does, and it equalizes the lows. That means if you have too much black in here, it will up the range just a little bit, just so we don't get full black or full white. So let me show you how it looks in the end, and it looks like this. So this is my specular for this material. And our metal is just not metal, so it will be black because it's concrete, not metallic. And here is a word that is very useful, is the n-stir or strength, so the normal strength. And what it does is just modulates the normal. So if I were to show you until here, and let me show you what it's actually doing to calculate my normals. So if you can see here, this is our diffuse and our specular part, and I think the metal is somewhere in here, but this big chunk here is the normal. So it's calculating a filter, the Sobel filter. So if you have a little bit of interest, you can just look it up in Wikipedia, although this is using just the Blender notes, so I think it will be much more concise to just write it manually, but this is a little bit more flexible. So let me just come back in here. So this 1 n-stir is just the normal strength. So if I were to say 3 n-stir, it will give me 3 times the normal strength. So this word is modulating this channel here, this normal map here. So let me just reduce it and increase it, and this will be the final normal strength for your map. So you can make it whatever value you want, although here is just too noisy. So that's pretty much it for at least this part. So let's move on. Now this is the most important part. This is the contrast for the normal. So if you see here, in our shader view, you can see that all these calculations are for the normal, and if we can just go ahead and add a ramp, so we can use, normally we can use our normal contrast words, so we have to use a special variant, the n contrast words. So n mid is the same as mid con, but it will affect just the normals. So if I were to put an output in here, you can see that it doesn't pipe you to the output of the mask, and that's because it's just modifying the ramp that is before all the calculation for the Sobel filter goes on. So if you want to watch your normal map, or rather how it will look, you can just type the #C. So this is a special debugger I made for this, and if I run it, let's see, you can see that now I am looking at the output of my normal filter, so like this. So this will edit the normal before the filter is applied. So if I say 0.5 and midcon and then run with the #C, we can see that now this is our normal. So the white parts will be the parts that are protruding, and the darker parts are the ones that are receding. So if I were to now do my output, you can see that our normal map is much more noisy. And what if you wanted to invert the normal? And that's where these words come here. So if you want to make the normal map inverted, you can just go ahead and type an invert, because we have a ton of reference up here. So what we do is just type inverted, and if I were to run it, you can see that now our normals are inverted. So what was white now is black, and vice versa. One final word we have to take into account is the blur. So right now the technique I'm using for my normal generation is just like, let's say I put before the mat new, I think I type it up here. Yeah, up here it is. So before the mat new, I type my concrete name and then a number. Now this number will be the size of the normal map, or rather the pixel difference between the normals. So now it's 1K. So if I type it 496, you can see that the normal gets just a little bit sharper. But this doesn't solve the major problem, which is just the normal that just looks too sharp, so the details are just too shallow. And I am still working in this process, but I found a workaround, at least a temporary one, or rather a feature one that we will keep in the future, and is the do blur word. So what this do blur word will do is just generate these blur maps. So for example, I have here a brick 15, and then I have a brick blur, and this blur map, what we'll do will be to make the ramp between our pixels just a little bit softer, so we can get a better transition. So right now I think these maps are excellent for high frequency detail to mid frequency, but to the low frequency it's just not that good. So if I run it with my do blur, it will generate a blur map using ImageMagick. So it will take a little bit, and now it's done. So the difference is quite slight, it's not a lot, but it's definitely just a little bit softer. And it does show up when you are using, for example, the brick material. So let me just call the brick, and brick 15, was it? Yep. And if you have already calculated, you won't have to do it again. So you can see that it's still, the detail is still quite flat, but it's just a little bit softer. So let me just remove my do blur here and run it again, and you can see that it's, without the blur it's just sharper. And if I add my blur again, just a little bit softer. So this is pretty much for our material making. Now, when I told you that I used this to generate our materials for the texture library, I wasn't lying. I actually did. And I was using these presets I wrote here in my library. So let me just go here to my add-ons and math table, and let me just zoom in here, and I use these presets, this matmake-mod, that matmake-concrete and such. So if I were to show you these ones, I would just have to type matmake. Oh, the matmake goes together, and then dash, let's say concrete, and I want an out, and I want my debugger there, and you can see that it's using the these words here, which are ideal for concrete. So let me just go here in my world and zoom into my map. Let's see where it is, and now I've found my environment. So let me just rotate it like so. You can see that our specular is much more matte, although it still has a little bit of sheen to it. So if I were to apply a preset for, let's see, I want a metal, let's see a copper one. I like that one, the copper, and it will calculate it as if this material were copper. So now it's kind of flat, so there's not much detail. But if you were to have the copper, I have a very nice copper material, the one that it's kind of melted. Yeah, that one looks pretty good. So the detail is very like high frequency detail. So let's see, if I were to come here in my locon and just type my C word, and if you edit anything here, you will, whenever you load it in here, you will see the results. But I was editing my aluminum and not the copper one. So let me just go down here and do #C and then save, and let's see, and you can see that yeah, the normal is just very flat, although I think it's because my copper images had very high contrast. So let's try another one. Let's try the stone, or rather, no, let me try the soil one. So make soil, and if I were to run it, you can see that my normal now has very high frequency, and we have quite a specular sheen to the material. And as always, my diffuse is very neutral, so I could just come here and then let me see if I can do a new D. So I say D, and let me just add a color, let's say a 50% dark. So let's see if this works, and it works. Just made it a little bit darker. So if I were to say brown RGB and then mix mode and then 50% dark, we would get a browner soil material. And if I were to say 50% desat, because it's too saturated, now we're getting something that's starting to look good. And if I were to combine it with the techniques of the previous video, where I just combined two colors using an eye mask, we would start to get very nice materials. So we don't need to have the color inside the final template material. Okay, now if you combine this technique with the Python scripting I showed you before, you can easily just put the name of a texture and then run it in sequence and then save it. We will just run this word down here, sbake-all. So let me just remove this thing here and then run this one, and it's calculating, but I don't think it will save anything because I am selecting nothing. It's using the scratch because I was testing with the scratch material. And here now I have my brick 15, so it will do nothing. Yeah, it did. Well, let's see what it did. I think it didn't do anything. Let's see. Let me just close this and close this, and now we have. Okay, so I fixed the problem. What the problem I had was that here in the mat scene world I was assigning the subdivision level of this cube here, so I had the viewport level assigned, so I changed it so now you specify the subdivision level. So if you want to preview, you just type a 5 or a 10 or whatever, although 5 you no longer see the edges, and if you want to bake you just type a 0 for the subdivision. And that's pretty much it. So now let's continue with our sbake. So sbake takes a selection, so I'm going to select brick underscore 15 and then takes a name, so the final texture name will be named, let's say, brick 15, and you call sbake all and you run it and wait a second, and now it's done. It took a little bit, around 20 seconds, but this one is not a cycles render, it's just a screen capture, so it was much faster. So let me show you now my folder structure here. We have a folder named screenshot, and now you can see that I have my brick 15 and it has diffuse, metal, normal and roughness. So if I check them, we can see that this is my metallic, just black, and this is my normal, and it's just perfect. So this will load fine in Blender or in whatever other application you have. And I have my roughness, which is very nice, very good looking roughness. So that's it for our material maker. This is a very useful tool. So in order to just expand it and use it as much as you want, if you know a little bit of Python, you can just check the Python file I will be adding to this, which is the one I use to generate the rest of the library. So that's pretty much it for the basics of neotex, and I will be seeing you in future tutorials.